Sometime around 2016, Reddit user Flaxenflare posted to the Let's Not Meet subreddit with the prompt, "He pretended to be my dog." They began the thread with, "Before I start, here's a bit of context to my story. My husband and I lived in a small 2-floor house with 2 main entrances, one along the front and the other on the side of the house, which opens up into the laundry room. When we're too busy or it's too late to walk our dog, we hook his collar onto a long line that's attached to one of the pipes on the corner of our house so he can use the bathroom. We used to do this from the door in our laundry room, but we'd noticed the large step from the door to the ground had been taking a toll on his hips. As a result, we started letting him out through the front door instead, since the porch is much closer to the ground. This particular night, I was home alone with my dog, and it was around midnight when I decided to let him outside one last time before going to bed. I hook him up to his line, close the door and lock it, before heading into the kitchen to put away the dishes. This was pretty routine. Even if he used the bathroom quickly, he liked to walk around along the front and side of the house for a few minutes before coming back inside. As I'm putting away the dishes, I hear a scratch on the door. How my dog signals he wants to come inside, so I head over to let him back in. Since I've watched way too many scary movies, I always look through the door's peephole before opening the door. Out of habit, I look to check that my dog is in front of the door. Instead, I see a man staring very intently at the door handle. I freeze with my hand on the door handle. I don't know how much time went by, but then I heard another scratch. This one louder than the last. This kind of wakes me up from my initial shock, and I run to grab my cell phone. I call my husband to tell him what's happening. He was very confused. I probably wasn't explaining the situation very well, but says that he's heading home. This is when I realize my dog is still outside with this person. I head back to the front door, trying to make as little noise as possible, to check whether the stranger is still there. Just like before, he's standing there, head bowed, looking at the doorknob. I tiptoe over to the laundry room and slowly open the door as quietly as possible. I can't see my dog anywhere, and the side of my house is covered in gravel. I knew I couldn't step outside without making a lot of noise. With my heart still pounding in my chest, I go to the front door to keep an eye on the stranger and get a better look at him. I considered calling the police, but I didn't feel they would take me seriously, since all this man was doing was standing in front of my house. I tried taking a picture of him with my cell phone, but my camera was only able to take pictures of the peephole and not the images behind the glass. All of a sudden, the man looks up directly at me. I swear he knew I was there. He glares at me, then opens his mouth to show this taunting, malicious grin. He stood there that way for a few seconds. With that, he turns around and starts to walk down the street. I stay in the same place, almost expecting him to rush back and start pounding on the door. Luckily, my husband got back after a few minutes. Long story short, he convinced me to call the police, and we went out looking for our dog. It turns out this man had cut the end of the line connected to the pipe, and our dog decided this was a good time for him to explore my neighbor's backyard, which was where we found him. It's been 3 years since this happened. We've since moved to a new house, for unrelated reasons, and the police weren't able to come up with any suspects. Ever since then, we take our dog on very long walks before the sun goes down. No edits were made to the post, and the closest thing to an update was a comment from user Flecks of Dust, who advised Flaxenflare to call the police. Flaxenflare then made the final comment on the situation. Yes, of course, you're completely right. I've had a few comments and messages like this, so I'll answer them all here. This didn't feel relevant to my account of the events, but when this occurred, I had recently moved to my husband's homeland. Before this, I had lived all of my life in a country which, unfortunately, to this day continues struggling with crime and a negligent police force. The few times my family had felt it was necessary to call the police, we were essentially ignored or told our situation wasn't critical. Since then, we grew up knowing that in an emergency, you call people you can depend on. In this case, my reflex was to call the first person I knew would come running to help. I'm incredibly grateful that I now live in a country where I can rely on the police, and I absolutely plan to make use of this privilege if the situation ever calls for it. But please understand, this isn't the norm everywhere. No further updates have been given, so the man may still be out there, and his intentions remain unclear. But perhaps it's best we never know what they were. On April 15, 2019, Reddit user quick_disc uploaded a post titled "Unexplainable Grotesque Girl" to the r/urban myth subreddit. However, moderators banned them for their story, not fitting the definition of an urban legend. Undeterred, they later shared their story on another subreddit dedicated to creepy content, Fantastic Daily. Along with the post, they included an eerie image and described their experience. So this has been happening for a couple weeks now. I have an abnormal job schedule, so I'm usually awake all through the night and sleep through the day. My routine on weekdays is to get home from work and watch Netflix until the wee hours of the morning. One night at around 4 a.m., this girl shows up outside my window. It took me God knows how long to notice her standing there because I was glued to the TV, but I catch her staring at me through the window. It startled me so hard because her features were completely abnormal. She was freakishly skinny, with exaggerated facial features, and her body was contorted and twisted in a way that really disturbed me. She looked like a car crash victim. I wasn't even sure she was still breathing until she ran away from the window. This has happened every single night since. Been trying to take pictures the last few nights, but she runs away as soon as I can pull my phone out. Although her head is facing away, this is the only decent photo I could snap. I talked with the police, and they of course blew me off, so I don't know what to do except ask Reddit. If this is paranormal, are there any urban legends that resemble this encounter? And if so, is there any way to get rid of this? 4 days later, they uploaded another image with this update to the story. Here's an update on my previous post about ongoing encounters with a creepy, grotesque girl standing outside my window. A lot of people commented that she could very well be a meth-addicted neighbor who needs legitimate help. I started believing this too, until the other night when she came to the window in a way worse condition. Her jaw is now completely unhinged, hanging wide open to an unnatural degree. I also noticed her wrist is fractured, deformed into an abnormal shape. She's been getting closer to my window too. I took the photo above as she was turning to run away. I'm not convinced that this is paranormal, but I'm definitely sure now that this isn't just a meth addict. As of typing this, I just placed an order for an outdoor surveillance camera off Amazon, so hoping to get more evidence for police and whoever else can help me. If anyone has any info on what I could potentially be dealing with here, please leave a comment or DM me. On April 21st, a second update was posted. A new incident happened that I haven't been able to post on Reddit yet. This was just last night. I was browsing YouTube and Reddit super late, facing towards the window the girl always comes to. Outdoor lights on and phone camera at the ready. But this time, she wasn't there. Instead, she came to a different window, the one that is behind me near my back door. She tapped on the glass rapidly and repeatedly for a solid 30 seconds. I sat there paralyzed, worried to move as I didn't want to aggravate her. But this was the closest I've ever seen her. So now my suspicions that this is more than a drug addict have been even more satiated. Please email me again if you have any more questions or potentially some answers. The other day I went to the sheriff's department and they told me that they're going to look into it and are going to question the neighbors. I believe they are leading with the meth addict theory, despite the near impossibilities I described to them. I will give you updates if anything more develops. On May 5th, 2019, the final update to the Reddit post was made. After the knocking on my window, sightings have become less and less frequent, which seems to have led the sheriff's department to lose interest. On a personal note, the less common sightings have actually taken a toll on me. I don't know when to expect her, or what she'll do next when I see her. As her visits go on, she seems to be more and more infatuated with me instead of just standing in my yard like she used to. When she comes, she's very close to my doors or windows. This thought keeps me awake, and my hours of sleep have been dwindling even less than usual. The next time she shows up, though, I am prepared to get some better evidence. As of the time of this recording, no further updates have been made in nearly 6 years. The status of the woman remains unknown, and Quick Disc's whereabouts are also unclear, as their Reddit account has been inactive since the incidents with the woman occurred. Sometime in 2016, a now-deleted user posted to the r/AskReddit subreddit with the caption, "Serious, what is the creepiest thing that has ever actually happened to you?" In the comments of the post, user BingBong1234 responded, "I've been waiting a long time to tell Reddit the full story of the Whistler. This story requires many details, but it is unexplainable, creepy, and 100% true. I also have video evidence. When I was about 8 years old, I was taking my dog for a walk through the neighborhood with my mom. It was maybe 11 p.m. We live next to a swamp woods area on the edge of our neighborhood in Lansing, Michigan. I remember it being very silent and slightly windy. From down in the swamp, we heard somebody whistling at us. It sounded sort of like a bird, but each whistle was different enough where the lack of consistency made it human-like. The whistle sounded higher than lower. I can't really describe it. My mom had a concerned, slightly terrified look on her face and grabbed my hand and said that we should go inside quickly. I didn't understand because I was too young, but seeing my mom freak out made me freak out too. After a while, though, I kind of forgot about it. This wasn't the only time that Bing Bong had experienced this strange whistle. He added, 2 years later, I was taking my dog out again late at night. There is a large bush that could easily obscure a person behind it just next to the front door. As I was finishing the walk, the whistling noise started again. Same pitches, same inconsistent human-like tones. As soon as I heard it, a chill went down my spine, as I remembered exactly the feeling of seeing my mom terrified, looking down into the swamp at something I couldn't see. Maybe she couldn't either. I ran inside as fast as possible. Years went by and I thought about it less and less. I told only a handful of people, and eventually it slipped from my mind. Fast forward to last summer, I'm 24, started dating my girl Sarah. We moved out to South Dakota for work. For Independence Day, we decided to go to Pierre, South Dakota and watch the fireworks along the bank of the Missouri River. There was a free camping spot behind a hospital where you could pitch your tent, hang out, and see the fireworks up the river. We were near the end of the campground and there were very few people around us. As it was getting dark, the fireworks began. They were pretty far away, so the illumination they brought was very little. Thus, we had to sit right at the edge of the river to be able to see them. A huge thunderhead was moving in and a storm was imminent, so the air seemed electric and the wind was picking up. The atmosphere was eerie, to say the least. The police boats herded all the other boats off of the river and had left our area to do that elsewhere. Most of the other campers walked up the river to have a better view of the fireworks. But Sarah and I stayed back and were drinking PBR tall boys and kicking it. Suddenly, we heard the sound of a paddle methodically dipping into the water. We saw a figure steering a canoe about 20 meters offshore. Sarah decided to go get more beers from the car, leaving me alone to stare at this mystery person. And then, of course, they whistled at me. My entire body was frozen and covered in goosebumps. It was the exact same whistler from my childhood, more than a decade earlier. I looked at the figure, but it was much too dark to discern who it could be. They were wearing a hat. When they were perpendicular to the shore from me, they stopped paddling, turned the canoe to face directly at me, and whistled right at me. I was so frightened I stood up and shouted at them, "Who are you?" They didn't say anything, just whistled a couple more times, turned the canoe 180 degrees, and paddled out of sight. I'm a videographer, so I already had my camera by my side and was taking video of the fireworks. As the canoe was almost out of sight, I grabbed my camera and got a shot of them whistling as they went away. When Sarah came back from getting beers, she was very confused as to why I was so freaked out. When I explained, she was freaked out a bit too. I was convinced we would both be murdered that night. How did this whistling person follow me, after 14 years, all the way to South Dakota? Was it a coincidence? Why was it the same whistling noise? Who was that person and where did they go? So many questions still unanswered. To this day, I'm more afraid of being outside in the dark, where I might hear that whistling again. I'm open to any explanations. A commenter from Venezuela named Gashura shared the story of El Silbón, or the Whistler. a legendary figure in Venezuelan and Colombian folklore. Gashura described it as a sort of damned soul that warns people of their coming death. Other members of the subreddit expressed interest in seeing the footage, prompting Bing Bong to update his original comment. Video is coming, I promise. Where I'm at in Uganda, the power goes out sometimes, so if you don't hear from me, either that happened or the whistler finally got me. He later edited his comment again, providing a link to the video with the caption, "When I was still filming the fireworks, I heard the whistling start. I was too scared to point the camera directly at the canoe, so I just turned my microphone toward it and kept a low-angle shot downriver toward the fireworks. If you wear headphones, you can hear it better. It's the two-note whistle, high, then low. You can hear me ask my girlfriend, 'Are you whistling? Is that you?' She said no, but I wasn't sure. So I told her stop it, because I was getting scared. In the last shot, I boosted the brightness as much as I could, and you can still make out the person in the canoe. It looks like they're wearing a red sweater or something." Bing Bong followed up with a final edit. "It's been a while and I apologize for that. I'm back in the US now, and I asked my mom about it. I sat her down and played the video for her. She honestly doesn't remember anything like that happening. I wish I had something more exciting to say. Alas, it must remain a mystery." Almost a decade has passed since then, and we may never know where that eerie whistling truly came from.
You whistling? Is it you? Stop it.